Right, okay, I've actually sawn and planed this off. I've got like the no, this is the spare bit I cut off the top, so like I say, I can save that for the next project now, that bit. Then I just planed this down with a normal wood plane, but the thing is, what I don't do, it's still standing up a little bit, and the last thing you want to do is like plane this and catch the mahogany, because you've planed that dead flat for the fretboard. So I don't like to plane, I mean, it's sticking up from the mahogany, you know, by probably about 1/4 of a millimetre, 1/2 a millimetre, something like that. I don't like to plane it down flat to the mahogany, because like I say, you've only got to catch the mahogany, tip the plane a little bit, catch the mahogany, and you've messed up the mating surface with your fretboard. So I finish it off with a cabinet scraper, like a curved cabinet scraper, and you can just put it on, so now you know you're not going to hit the mahogany, and just finish it off with this. I mean, I really like cabinet scrapers. They're all, you know, when you're, well, I suppose when you're starting off as an amateur woodworker, it's not the sort of thing you'd go and buy, because what's a cabinet scraper for? But they are incredibly useful tools. I mean, they give a finish that's, you know, almost good enough to not bother sanding. I mean, this is not particularly sharp, this one, but now we're getting down to I mean, you can see the nice, you know, what it takes off. It's really nice, but and I can feel that now is like, it's just got a fraction to go more at this end actually. Yeah, that is absolutely flat on there now. I mean, obviously I can't cabinet scrape these small bits here. I'll do that with a file, and then there's this little triangular bit to take off on the end, but that's that. So it's a nice easy job. Oh, hi again. Right, we're on to the fretboard now, and I've got these Indian rosewood planks. I mean, I know that it's questionable what the Les Paul Special fretboard was made of. It's rosewood, definitely, and it's most probably Brazilian rosewood. Well, I don't want to use up my stock of Brazilian rosewood on it, that's for certain. You know, I have hardly got a stock left, and I'm keeping that for, you know, probably mostly like Les Paul standards and Flying V's and stuff. I mean, you know, it is really, you know, I wonder how many people would be able to tell, you know, when you've built a guitar and the fretboard's got a bit of wear on it, and it goes darker with oils and stuff like that, whether people could honestly tell the difference between Brazilian rosewood and and you know, other types of rosewood. I mean, it's very, very difficult to, and sometimes the only way I can tell is by actually smelling the rosewood, Brazilian rosewood, when you work it, when you cut it, and when you you know, plane it. It does smell of chocolate a bit. But this, you know, I must say, this Indian rosewood does as well. And you know, the only way you can tell on this, I mean, I haven't got Brazilian rosewood here. I've probably got a little bit. This is actually a bit of Brazilian rosewood, and it's got a more pronounced chocolatey smell, and you can see a sort of a reddishness to it. Well, when I was building the 67 Strat, the reason why I built a 67 is because that's around when they changed to use cheaper rosewood or Indian rosewood from the Brazilian. Now, here's the difference here. I mean, bearing in mind Brazilian rosewood, you get all different shades of it anyway. But when I did the Strat, I actually stained the rosewood with a bit of red, this Indian rosewood with a bit of red stain, and it stained it really well. And honestly, I wouldn't be able to tell on the guitar that it wasn't Brazilian rosewood. I mean, it's just one of those things what people want because it's a vintage guitar. The other thing is, these are two planks I've got down here of Indian rosewood, and just to kind of say what I've done is, one of these has had the Strat fretboard cut out of it, and the other one I've just cut this fretboard out of it. But I've been careful. The reason why I've done both is I've been careful because if I've ever wanted to make a rosewood capped guitar, you know, I've still got enough down here to make a guitar top out of. Whether I will or not, it's another thing, but it's just sort of keeping my options open by being a bit careful how I cut things. So let's get this put away and I'll get working on this fretboard now. Okay. Getting back to this fretboard here, it's a mighty shame actually. The thickness of this rosewood is 12.6 millimeters, and what I've tried to do, you can see there, is put a saw through it and see if I can slice it down in the middle and make two fretboards out of it. But unfortunately, you know, if I do that, I've set it up really well on the bandsaw, and I've got 5.9 millimeters and 5.36 millimeters, and if I cut it, you know, obviously I'll have saw marks off it, and any inaccuracies I'll still have to plane it, and it will just be getting too thin. So the really sad thing is, you know, I'm going to have to plane this down from, you know, I'm going to have to plane a good, like, you know, and just waste the wood really. I'm going to have to, you know, plane like 5 millimeters off it, which is a real shame. It's not, I mean, if it was like, say, 13.5 mil thick, I could have got away with it, but and there's just too much of a. Well, hi there, my camera got to storage issues, so I've just cleared some videos from it. Going back to this fretboard, I don't know how much was picked up in the last video before it stopped, but I tried to actually cut this fretboard thinner, or investigate cutting it thinner, so I could, you know, preserve some wood sort of thing, but it really wasn't, it's not practical. You know, it wasn't quite thick enough, and I actually had more of a risk of just basically, you know, ruining both bits of wood sort of thing that I'd make. So I basically just planed it down on the old planer over here, pushed it through, So now we've got a fretboard blank that's 6mm thick, just over 6mm thick, which is ideal starting point. By the time you plane the radius on it, you're down to you know, you'll get down to the right thickness. So with this Les Paul Special, the fretboards were bound. I actually found these two fretboards, these ebony ones, but they're actually a 25 inch scale length, which I think PRS use that, but yeah, so they're no good to me. So they can go back in the pile. Maybe if I build some custom guitar I can do it 25. But now the this fretboard is now ready to sort of be cambered kind of thing, but it does the special fretboard, Les Paul Special fretboard, is bound with this sort of binding on the edge, and it has dots sort of thing, so at least we haven't got to bother making these crown things and the awkwardness of inlaying those. So basically what I want to do is now get it to the sort of plan view, and I have I have two templates. So I've got these two fretboard templates I made. One is for a Les Paul Junior, which is wider. It's a wider fretboard because it doesn't have the binding on it, so I won't be using that. And I have here the Les Paul standard fretboard, which is what I want to use basically. So that's what I want to cut this down to. Now you can do this a number of ways. Obviously the easiest way is to just you know, plane it down. It's perfectly happy doing that. Or if you want to use this template, you know, I can just whiz it round on a router, and that will do it. I mean, I do it both ways depending. I mean, if I've got my routing table set up to do something, then I won't. When I want to do a fretboard, I won't bother. I'll just plane it. But on this, I'll probably like whiz round with a router. Then that will be accurate sort of thing. So I'll get set up to do that. It's a very easy job. Yeah, so let's go and do that. Hi guys, back to this fretboard, and what I've done is I've got my template here, and I've basically done the old double-sided tape business with it, stuck the rosewood onto the template. So now what I can do, I've got my bearing guided cutter in here, bearing on the top, so that will run on the template, and I can go round. It's just going to take seconds, honestly. It takes twice as long to set it up. Just going to get my glasses on because I can't see stuff all. Okay, let's just do this now. And all that fuss of setting up just to do that. I'm not going to do the back edge here or the front edge because this wood is so hard and brittle that, you know, I mean, I could probably do the front like that, but it's very likely to chip off the edge, and you can see how I don't cut right to the edge. I just don't want to risk chipping the fretboard, and equally I haven't done anything on there, and again you can see I haven't gone right to the edge there, so I'll be chopping these off by hand. But now that's got the width of the fretboard perfectly done, and now I'll just saw these off and we'll be all good. Well, hi there. Right, I've just trimmed off the back edge of this fretboard here. I'm going to leave the front long because the toast rack jig for cutting the fret slots includes the top nut cut, so I can, you know, do that when I do the fretboard. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but I've just treated myself to a new one of these saws. My old one is it's pretty blunt now, but they are absolutely fantastic, these like Japanese saws. You can see how vicious the teeth are on them, and they really do cut excellently, and they're such a thin blade as well. You know, they cut on the pull stroke, not push, because it would bend too much going that way. But yeah, they really are good. I think this was around £25 or something like that, and I missed it when my old one got so blunt. I'd used it so much, but fantastic things, and well worth investing a little bit in, because they're so nice for cutting. And yep, so cut the end of the fretboard off with that, and there we go. Keep this safe in its bag and stuff here, so we're all good. But what I'll do now is we can actually remove this from the template. There we go. So now we've got the fretboard the right thickness to go on here, so it's going to get the binding put on it, and then you know, it will be all good. It will be all good. Yep. So next job now is cutting the fret slots in it, which I don't really enjoy doing very much, but it's well worth getting set up properly to do it. And so I'll get you back then. But yeah, so get that on there. I think I'll have to buy some new binding. I don't think I've got enough, but there we go. Good. Right, well, here we go. I actually set up the fretboard in the fret cutting jig, and it's just forgotten. Oh Christ, I haven't done the camber on it yet. So we've got to go for a 12-inch camber on this. Now, this is what I do, is I glue the fretboard with the old double-sided tape business to a nice flat bit of wood. And you know, I've spent a lot of time sharpening the plane, and if you try and plane this hardwood with a, you know, a blunt plane, you will cause chips in there, and that gives you a world of hurt. It really does. So you want to be really careful of the fretboard chipping. If you feel the plane sort of grinding into the, just stop and maybe just sand the whole thing. But you know, this is fairly, just hear how nicely that's planing, and I've got it on a very light cut. And what I do is I've done this before anyway, but I just get my fret press clamping core that's 12.5 radius, and when I get closer I'll get you back and show you. Right, here we go. I'm setting up to cut these fret slots. The couple of issues here This toast rack thing to cut the slots is actually the modern Gibson fret spacing. I mean, there are a few ways you can space frets. This is the sort of mathematical way, which I think is 17 point something divided by the scale length. This old fretboard is a rule of 18 that all these old guitars were made from, and the fret positions slightly deviate. I hope you can see on there, but really they're all the same until they get down to somewhere around the sort of 6th fret, something like that, and then they start. I mean, it's so close. It's you know, it's really like difficult to, you know, by the time you get back down to the 1st fret, it's like almost just like half a fret out, something like that. But what I'll do is I'll you know, the upper frets are exactly like I say, down to about the 6th fret. So what I'll do is start at this end and then cut all those first, and then wiggle it around a bit down there. But I like to keep it like vintage sort of thing. The other thing that's really important, if the fretboard, if you started off with a square fretboard, you know, with the thing square, you could obviously just jam the fretboard against one edge of this jig and all your frets would be nicely cut perpendicular across the wood. But you know, fretboards seem to be supplied blank, fretboard blanks seem to be supplied in all sorts of shapes and sizes, some bits tapered, this, that and the other. So what I do, as you saw, I tapered the fretboard first and then very accurately measure the space between the edge of the fretboard and the jig, both at this end, the nut end, and at that end, to make sure the fretboard follows the center line. If you don't get the fretboard following the center line of the jig with a tapered fretboard here, you're going to end up cutting fret slots which are at a slight angle, and that does look really untidy. The other thing is you want it clamped down like absolutely solid, because when you cut this, you know, when you cut this, wood is so hard to cut that you know, you once it moves a little bit, it like jams the saw and everything like that. So I'll be putting another additional clamp in here and moving that down to do these frets sort of thing. So I'll get cutting. Let's get a scrap bit of wood. This will do just to hold it, and then we can start cutting. So everything's clamped down, and literally it is just, I mean, be careful with these fret toast rack things. First notch is not the 1st fret. The first notch is for the nut, and then you got fret 1 and they go up to 24, so we're obviously only doing 22 frets. But like I say, this is a purpose built jig, and now well, hi there. Right, you can see that I've cut the fret slots now. It's quite a gutty job, to be honest. This wood is so hard. Hi there. Here's my usual way of making dots. I've just got like a hole drilled in a piece of brass here, and then a drill with like a sharpened sort of shank, and just the material that's nitrocelluloid, and we can just stamp them out. don't know how many that is. Let's have a look. I think you need 10, do you? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Got 11 there. I'll only lose them if I try. One of them doesn't look very round, so must have just caught the edge of a hole. So I'll do a couple more just in case. Few more there. I actually measured these on the original one that I had at 9/32 of an inch, which is basically 7 millimeters. So I'm keeping to that sort of thing. I try to look up on the internet what diameter Les Paul special dots are, but I don't know if you guys are finding the same thing as me nowadays. Google searches doesn't seem to glean much useful information. You know, it's like very sort of, I don't know, just seems to have stopped being so useful. You know, you type in something and you just get a load of commercial stuff come up instead of, you know, information, which would be good. But yeah, so anyway, like I say, this is what's it called? Celluloid anyway, yeah. That I use, that I think was used on the originals, but yep, so that's that now. And also with this drill that we stamped through, I mean, that hole in there has got to be drilled with that drill, and or the same size drill, so it fits through and stamps out a nice accurate hole. So you can now turn that drill upside down, or the right way around, and then drill the fretboard with it, and then you're good to go. So we have the fretboard here, obviously, so I'll get marking the usual spots and then get them glued in. Right, here we are. I've got the don't know if you can see them on there, the position markers center punched. And the way I do that is I actually I lay it next to another fretboard, so I don't do anything stupid like put a marker dot in the wrong gap. I do a diagonal line between the fret slots, so it marks the center everywhere I want it. Obviously it's no good at the 12th fret, and then I put a line down this. I line up all those down the center as well with a long ruler and mark the center of each one. So that seems to be the easiest way, just do a crossed line sort of thing between the slots, and that gives you the center, and then try and line them all up in case you've got one out sort of thing with a long straight edge. The dots at the 12th fret on this guitar, I measured at, was it 1 5/8, like 30, somewhere around 34 millimeters. I'll just get back to that, 34, 35 millimeters. Let's see what I think. I think they were, yeah, 1 3/8 is what I actually got. I'm not, they're very difficult to measure actually, but somewhere around there. So they're quite widely spaced. So anyway, we'll get drilling, and you only want to go down obviously slightly less depth than the dot sort of thing. So that was fairly easy anyway. The dots drilled in now, and I use a brad point drill, so it's not got a tapered edge, so it cuts more of a square hole with a little point in the middle sort of thing. So I think we're all good there. you know, take care to get them accurately in the middle, sort of thing. If they look a bit odd when you do them, you know, you can always sort of fill them and redo them afterwards. It's not ideal, but you can, you know, you can, and also when you're drilling these, you can adjust the depth stop on the drill, so you're not going to go too deep. But I've kind of done enough of them to know how deep they should go. So there we go. Now we can put these in. I wish I had some very liquid super glue to stick them in, but I haven't. I've only got thick shit. So yeah, we'll bob them in with that. Should be okay. Get back to you then. Okay, so you're seeing me move on quite quickly here. I glued the fretboard dots in and then filed them down and then gave them a quick sand in. The other thing I did after that is I went through all the fret slots with a saw, the fret saw again, and made sure they were all completely clear. And I also went over them with a triangular file just to open up the entrance to the, you know, the entrance to the slot, sort of thing, so the frets would go in easier. Then I glued the binding on. It's important to get this in the right order, otherwise, you know, you obviously can't recheck and recut the fret slots once the binding's on, otherwise you have to saw through the binding. So wise to be careful with that. With the binding, I did have some millimetre binding. That's what it roughly seems to be. It's a millimetre, like 3/32 or something like that. So this is just a bit over a millimetre, so it's the right binding. Sometimes you see it's quoted as being a bit thicker, but you know, it always looks so thin. And I think some of the reason for that is you know, the edge of the frets when they're, you know, chamfered over, the binding gets chamfered a little bit as well. When gluing the binding on, be very sparing with the super glue. I mean, I use super glue, but the last thing you want, use a jellied super glue sort of thing that doesn't wick in to slots or anything like that, because if you get super glue in the fret slots when you're gluing and binding on, and believe me, I'm speaking from experience because I've done it, you know, you've basically got to rip the binding off and recut the fret slots, because it's an absolute nightmare to clean them out. You will make a mess. So what I do is clamp the fretboard sideways on in a vise sort of thing, and just do a little blob of super glue between each fret. And then when you, and I use a more viscous super glue, at least a medium viscosity, and then glue the binding on, so it doesn't have a tendency to, then there's not a great deal of it. You know, the temptation is, oh, you know, put a line of super glue on, and then immediately just wicks up the fret slots, and you've made a complete mess then. Oh, hi ladies and gentlemen. Right, we got this fretboard like pretty well down the line to completion yesterday. You know, it's come out really nice. I'm not going to do a whole video on fretting again. I mean, how many of those have I've done? But you know, I mean, I can't even recall how many fretboards I've refretted and built in my life, sort of thing. But you never stop learning, sort of thing. And one thing, I always favoured the fretboard being glued on the neck and then fretted. I'm kind of changing my mind a bit now, and one of the reasons with that is just the physics of doing it. You know, when you've got like a neck and you're trying to do it, you know, you're sort of all at funny angles. When you've got just a fretboard like this, it's absolutely perfect. Of course, the thing you pay for that problem when you glue it on the neck. You've got to make sure you get it as flat as possible, and you're not going to get it, you know, if you build the fretboard, if you glue the fretboard on the neck and then you shape it and all that, you can guarantee that it's absolutely perfectly flat before you start fretting. Doing it this way you can't, but the very minor imperfections you'd get on it, as long as you've done everything properly, you can obviously get out by stoning the frets. And I've never fretted a neck and it's been perfectly flat. I've always had to, you know, run a stone over the frets to flatten them. So I'm just kind of now, because I think it's really important to get the frets in perfectly, and you know, when you're fretting sort of like this flat on a metal surface and all that and pressing the frets in, you've got a much better chance of getting the frets absolutely perfectly in there. The other thing I honestly think is when I fret this fretboard, because when the frets go in, they're like a wedge, you will see the fretboard slightly warp, like, you know, upwards. And if you do that on a neck with the fretboard glued on the neck, then that puts quite a lot of force, back bow, on the you know, force on the neck naturally. And if you've got a double acting truss rod, that's fine because you can bend it both ways. But if you've only got like a single acting vintage truss rod, then you can't get a back bow out. And I'm not saying that, you know, the force of the frets is going to be great, but there is a chance of that happening. So if you fret the fretboard off the neck and it bends slightly, you think when it's on there, you're actually stretching that bend out when you clamp it down, and you know, it's not going to apply the same force to the neck. And it's just a thought really. And you know, probably, but the main reason I like doing it like this now is that I increasingly use like Brazilian rosewood and stuff like that, which is as hard as nails, and just to have it flat and down properly is like really nice. Now the other thing as well is that, you know, I've said it before, but you must make sure that your fret slots are absolutely clean. You know, I've run a scalpel down each of these and felt the scalpel blade right on the bottom of the fret slot, sort of thing. Make sure that they're perfect and there's no burrs on them, so the frets can't seat I mean, the fret wire is T section, but you want the shoulders of that T to fit bang on the fretboard. And when you're doing a bound fretboard as well, you have to chomp off the edges of the frets, and you know, you can buy tools to do it, like this nipper sort of thing, and this is a good quality one from Stumac, so it tends to nip off quite well. But just on the bit where you've nipped it off, you do tend to see like a little bit of the tang left there, so I file that off with a file so it's dead flat, so you've got the best possible chance of the frets seating really nicely. So you can see with those bits cut off now on the fret, those tang bits cut off, you know, the tang will fit between the binding sort of thing, and you won't be graunching the binding or anything. And what I do again is, like, I put a bit of, with an unbound fretboard, you can just press the frets in and then get some very runny super glue and dob a bit on each end, and it will run really well up underneath the frets. But obviously you can't do that with a bound neck. And with a bound neck, what I do is I get some tight bond wood glue and just run the tang of the fret just on, just so you get a little bead of tight bond on the fret, and then what you want to do, I have to get my glasses on here. Just locate it in the fret, in the slot. Give it a tap, and then it's ready to be pressed in, and then bring the clamping core down on it. And I tend to press the edges in, just and you can see that squeezed that glue out along there, and all you need is like a damp. What have we got? I've got a bit of water here. Bit of a damp cloth, and then you can just wipe the and just have a good look, and you can see how well that is seated in there now. It's actually, you know, there's absolutely nothing, no gap underneath that fret or anything. It's absolutely gone in perfect. And if you have any, like, you know, if you see a fret that hasn't seated properly, you can try and tap it in or walk it underneath the clamping coil sort of thing, and then you know, you can get it in. But if it doesn't go in properly, there's something wrong, something in the slot or whatever, and then, you know, the only thing is to pull the fret out, clean the slot out, and do it again. And I mean, just look how nicely that's pressed in. It's really nice. And you know, I remember in my early days of guitar building, it was like, yeah, something like that. But now I take great care in you know, getting the frets in properly. And you know, and this is where I was saying about clamping the fretboard tightly in that toast rack to cut the slots. You know, you haven't wobbled the saw about in there at all and got wider patches where the tang of the fret is not going to grip. All the slots are perfect, you know, and it fretting all starts from the beginning like that. Unless you get it like dead right, you're fighting it, and you don't want to be doing that. You want fretting to be a pleasant job, because at the end of the day, if the frets are crap, the guitar's going to be crap. So yep, there we go. I'm not going to cover any more fretting. We've done it all. I'll bring you back when the fretboard's finished. Right, hi there and welcome back. Okay, I've been fretting this fretboard, and you know, you saw the care and the chat that I was doing about it. Everything went absolutely perfect. I had no issue with any one of the frets. They all went in absolutely lovely. You know, the main thing is getting the shoulders of the T, you know, firmly down on the fretboard. And if you're not achieving that, then something is wrong. Like I say, fretting is a bit of a funny thing. You know, you can't spend enough time making sure everything is accurately done, right from the fret slots right through to fretting. There's a couple of things, they're personal things, I guess, but you know, typically nowadays you seem to buy fret wire in this sort of length, which is about, I presume it's a foot. It looks about a foot, and you know, you used to buy it in coils, but I guess because of the problem with postage and stuff, then it's easier to send in that, but it tends to be a bit wasteful in that you at least need 4 feet to fret a guitar, and I would buy 5 of these. If you cut all your, you know,
I don't like to cut all my frets first, and then, you know, if you're doing a bound fretboard, then cutting the ends off all of them, it gets too much of a gutty process. You know, you've got 22 frets to cut, you've got 44 ends to trim back, and I prefer just to do one at a time. It just seems much more comfy to me to do it that way. You know, just do one frets, but you know, if you start at this end of the fretboard, anything you've got after you've cut this fret, the longer frets, anything you've got left at the end might be enough to do one of the shorter frets. If you start at the shorter end of the fretboard and work up, you're obviously gonna, you know, you're gonna waste frets, because if you've got a bit that's that long at the end and you think, oh, it won't do the next fret, you know, but it could have done one earlier, then, you know, you're gonna waste. So start at the 22nd fret and work down. Having said that, I did this the other way around, but the most important thing is the quality of the job, obviously, and I am not an advocate at all of hammering frets in with whatever hammer you use. I mean, some people say, oh yes, you know, you buy a brass fretting hammer. No, you still dent the fret wire. And, you know, when you're hammering the fretting in and you're working it along, you know, you're like tap, 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 tap. You're actually, you know, bending the fret, because what you basically, you know, I've basically got is this thing that curls the fret wire. You know, it sets it on a radius sort of thing. So as you press the fret down, you know, it's over radius. As you press the fret down, you know, the ends are getting squashed in more, sort of thing. And, you know, there's not one dent on those frets, and guaranteed if you were hammering it, you'd have dents with whatever hammer you use. And if you use a soft hammer, then your hammer's going to get dented. So no, fret press is the way to go. If you if you can't do that, yes, of course you can do it with a hammer, but I just think, you know, the chances of getting a nicer job with a fret press is a lot better. And you can see, you know, you put the press down on the fret, and then you can just feel it go boom down, and you can feel the fret solidly go in there. If you hammer a fret in, you get to the other end, there's a good chance that this end, you know, the other end will start lifting as well. With a fret press it won't, you know. But it all comes down to really taking your time and getting those fret slots perfect. So, but I'm chuffed with that. That's an absolutely perfection fret job. And blow my own trumpet there, eh? But I don't ever ask me to do stainless steel frets. I've done it once and I vowed never ever again. It's so hard to do, and anybody who does it, and I know people who do it well, they're blooming marvellous. I would never touch stainless steel frets. I just can't do it. They wreck your tools as well. But anyway, there we go. Got that fretted now, and it hasn't taken me long really. So probably an hour and a half to put all the frets in, and we're all good. So nice. They're 2.4mm wide, and probably very close to 6105s, which is what people tend to go for. But there we go, chocks away, all done. Well, hi there and welcome to 3R Guitars again. We're doing the fretboard this morning, which we've as good as finished really. We've got the body done, and what I've actually done is I've put the rounded edge on it. I mean, simply just go around with a quarter round cutter. I remember doing that on the last one I made, and it seemed about right with the original. Like I say, there's very little data on the internet concerning it really, which is a bit annoying. You know, you look at stuff, it doesn't tell you anything. So what I've done as well is I've glued the wings on the headstock for the you know, the headstock width there, so that they are set in now. It's quite a simple job really. The only thing that I'm a bit confused about, and I can't remember how it went, was you've got the wire channel that runs through from the front pickup to the, you know, catches the back pickup and then into the channel, and like you drill through obviously before the neck was done, before the neck's on, and then you go through. But what's confusing me is when you glue the neck in, how do you get, you know, because the neck tenon actually sort of rises up to body level here, and it's that, you know, sort of half-inch odd there of width of the neck. I mean, would you drill that from the other end before you put the neck in and try and match it up? It's the only thing I can think you can do. Yeah, I'm a bit confused by that, but something we'll sort out. I must admit that I'm a bit yeah, a bit jaundiced doing it today. Like we're just in the middle of old Donald Trump and his fucking tariff bollocks, and you know, when he wipes out your pension, it's not very nice, is it? And it just pisses me off that some like orange twat can do that in one day. I don't know what it go. Anyway, such is life. It just seems to be one turmoil after another now. But so what I'm going to do next is like I'm going to wait for this to set, sort of cut the headstock to shape, and then glue the fretboard on and start doing that. I suppose I could cut the jack hole. I've actually got that. I mean, I've only got a very rudimentary drawing of this guitar, mainly because you know, it's so much of it is exactly the same as the Junior, of which I've got very accurate drawings of. It was only really the body outline and where the controls were. But one thing with this special is that you know, it was the same as the Junior. You know, they did a double cut Junior, and basically, you know, if you look at it, here's the double cut Junior plan I did. It's very detailed. If you put that on over the top, the body is identical, apart from, you know, is almost identical really round the back and everything like that. And it's just really the front of it that the shape is changed to catch the double cutaway bit. And I can see why they sort of did it, because, sorry, getting this again here, I thought the really uncomfortable bit about the Les Paul Junior is that the single cut was this neck arrangement where you had like a cheek on the edge of the body to sort of, you know, so the neck actually went in a complete pocket, and you just had this square lump here in the cutaway. And I just thought that that's always really ugly and bulky. So when they changed to the double cut, okay, the neck joint is weaker and smaller, but really not that much, I don't think. So, you know, I think the double cutaway is a much neater design. So where are we? Yeah, so really unfortunately I didn't do a really detailed drawing of this, and you know, if I had done, I'd have been a bit more certain of a few things. You know, at the time I just thought, oh, it's the same as the Junior, and I'll just do a drawing of it, an outline of it. The one thing they changed, I think, I don't know, remember when, but when the double cut first came out, I don't know, was it around 58, the body edges were still a much tighter radius, a much sharper edge on the body, and then they changed it to this more rounded radius. sometime in '59, I think. So, you know, I've done that, which I think is quite nice. I mean, I think it's a really nice guitar, but there's still a few clunky, ugly bits about it. You know, this extra strip of pickguard over the front here, sort of thing, that always looks untidy, I think. But yeah, so I think it's coming on. I'm just, you know, I was nice and calm doing the fretting today. Then I went in and read the news, and I just thought, oh Christ, it's pissing me off. You know, just did the radius around here, sort of thing. I don't know if I'm really in the mood today for it, but I think I'll go in and have a cup of coffee and let's just have a sit down and try and calm down a bit and come back to it. But I've got the jack socket hole to drill. I'm sure that's an inch hole, sort of thing, the same as the junior. Get that drilled in there, and I've got that marked on the plan exactly where that is, so that's no problem. Yeah, and we'll go from there. C'est la vie. Yeah, but it's coming out very nicely. I just don't want to, you know, when I'm not in 100% frame of mind, I just don't want to do something and then get really upset because I've made an idiot of myself cutting something. So a cup of coffee and a bit of calming down, I think, and I'll get back to you. Thank you. All right, here we are. We've got the fretboard glued on, clamping cool on it and everything like that. And what you want to look for is in the joint that the glue has squeezed out, you know, so you know the glue has got right to the extremities, sort of thing. You know, I sometimes see people, you know, they glue up the fretboard, they put the tight bond on there. Oh, you've got to be quick, you've got to be quick. And they're running around like lunatics, you know, gluing it. You know, this glue takes hours to dry, and there's no need to rush. The important thing is getting it on there absolutely accurately, and if it's not on there accurately, take it off and start again, you know. But, you know, it's fine. And if you put the fretboard on and you slide it around a little bit, you know, it tends to stick itself, and sort of prevent the thing sliding. What you've got to watch, obviously, is that it doesn't slide once it, you know, when you clamp it up, sort of thing. And what I do is gently apply pressure with the clamps. I don't put one clamp on and graunch it up or anything. Leave them all a bit loose, and then slowly tighten them up and make sure the fretboard's not moving. Nice and easy, sort of thing. But as long as you do it in a logical way, you're not going to get too many problems. But nice to get it all clamped up and glued now, so I don't think we'll be doing anything else with the neck today. But that's quite nice now, so I don't think we've got any problems with it. I can't really think of anything else to say. We're like, you know, we're all pretty good on it now. So yep, that's that done. You know, I could clean up the edge of the fretboard with a chisel, but it's very difficult to get in there, you know, with all the clamps on, so I just prefer just to leave it and sort that problem out later. But yeah, we're all good with this now. Really steaming on with this guitar, so that's nice. Cheers.